PlayStation 4 games outside of your home through the internet. That wasn't announced or anything, but that's just me speculating just based on the nature of the Gaikai technology. Certainly a lot of potential in this.
One of the coolest features that I know is probably not for everyone, the one that got me probably more excited than the others, was the assisting gameplay that they talked about possibly being able to have other people view the game as you're playing it, and then people over the internet being able to join in and like maybe take a round of your game. I think like that, like virtual couch scenario. I think that is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely trying to incorporate like the couch gameplay through the internet. And I mean for some people this could be an annoying thing. I mean I guess some people don't want to be spectated on. This can be a boon for like say esports type stuff, but I
I'm
mean in
sure there's
terms.
probably going to be like privacy filters to.
Oh yeah, I mean this is they blatantly said that it's something that you can choose.
Right.
And it's interesting what they talked about in terms of being able to take over the controls. Obviously, the person that's spectating is going to get that sort of that laggy-ish internet streaming version of the gameplay rather than what someone would experience playing directly through the console. Um, so I mean that's going to be interesting for some people that are like say if you're trying to connect with somebody that that you live miles away from. Um, Definitely something that is more particular to people's situations.
Yeah, definitely. Brian, anything else? Anything you want to add to the talk about Gaikai in particular?
With Gaikai, I think it's a really awesome technology. I'm I kind of like mixed feelings because I'm not sure the infrastructure is there. That's the problem when you bring in a lot of these really bandwidth intensive ideas like streaming games and what have you. Um, so I don't know how it's going to actually play out. It's very cool, but we'll have to kind of wait and see as far as how well it will work because streaming is an awesome idea when we think about it. It's like okay, it's just one constant flow, but when it actually happens, some people are just like, uh, okay, I've been sitting here like for 5 seconds and like they just finally did what I told it to do or whatever. But
Right.
Yeah,
yeah, so
Yeah.
kind of mixed on the fence with that. So
I
I
mean,
think well, Sony's been pretty much clear to say that these are things that will happen iteratively. It's not going to just as soon as you buy a PlayStation 4, you're going to have all these features. These are things they're working on. So they're making no claims to say that all these things are ready to go out of the box.
yeah, I think that a lot of that has to do with the infrastructure concerns. I think Sony knows that this isn't viable for everyone, and one of the things that might kind of be risky for them is just the fact that they're supposedly banking their back compatibility on this technology. There is no native support for PlayStation 3 games. Um, so, first of all, is there going to be out of the box streaming technology ready to go for PlayStation 3 games? How is this going to work with people's physical copies of PlayStation 3 games? I mean, there's a lot of questions that about that, and
Yeah.
certainly it's not going to be nearly as good as native support. If Microsoft can come out of the gate and say we got native support for 360 games, then that could be something in their favor.
Yeah, well, there was some news going around today that PlayStation 4 will not support disc-based PlayStation 3 games. So I
Uh,
think they're going to need this backwards compatibility via the Gaikai service, but I would be really surprised if it wasn't available day one, at least for PlayStation 3 games, maybe not PS2 or PS1 games.
that could be a deal breaker for some people, I think, because
Yeah,
I mean most people have. I'm going to go out on a limb and say most people have their games on disc because obviously a fair amount is available on the PlayStation Network store, but I mean the physical media was basically the dominant form of playing your game with the last generation. So that could be problematic for them in some ways, but we'll have to see what the fallout for that is.
Right. All right. Well, let's let the Gaikai one go and see what next. Let's talk a little bit about their push for social features. If I could, as soon as you can, Brian, if I could get a picture of that personalized profile page. But yeah, basically they're talking about possibly tying in all your existing social networks to create like your video game social network page.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I liken it sort of to Netflix. It sounds kind of like you got your recommended films. Well, here's your recommended games. It got a little weird with what they were promising in some regards because,
There it is.
yeah.
First of all,
They're talking about downloading games in the background before you even buy them. I'm like, I don't know if.
I just want to point out the guy's profile picture. Can we just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
What's going on in this profile picture?
He's obviously very amused by something.
Either that or he's taking the best shit in the world.
Anything is possible. Obviously, the PlayStation 4 experience is just that awesome. I mean, he's having the time of his life using the interface there.
Right.
It's so awesome. My PlayStation 4 is taking my picture.
But yeah, I mean, I think just as long as there's like a certain like way to filter like how it communicates with other social networks. But the idea of it being able to kind of customize what I'm interested in seeing and what I'm not is really cool. And the idea of also being able to like tag other people's gameplay and having that kind of like communication between games.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like when you go to their profile page, you'll see like a feed of what they're playing right at that moment. You're like, oh, that looks interesting. And you just, bring it up to full screen, and you just sit there watching it, I guess. Obviously, there's some peculiar things, like I said, the background downloading of games before you even purchase them. I hope that's not something that they push too hard. Obviously,
why do you say that?
Well, I mean, to me, if my PlayStation 4 is like downloading games using my bandwidth without me for sure even wanting the games that it thinks I want. I mean,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
With just downloading massive files without my explicit consent. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a setting to disable that, but it just seems kind of weird. But I mean, it definitely sounds like they're doing much more to integrate the social aspects, whereas on the PlayStation 3, it almost seemed kind of tacked on in a lot of ways. This time, they're definitely trying to make it more the center point.
Yeah, I think they made a point. They even early on in the conference, they said that we came out with a system that was just behind the curve of when there was this massive shift in the way people consumed entertainment. And that now, knowing that, they've built the system with all these things in mind. I mean, PlayStation 3 is a perfect example. Just look at their storefront of just how behind the curve they were because they weren't ready for what was going to happen even a year later.
Yeah, I mean, and especially in terms of like multitasking, like they gave a very small amount of memory to the background tasks in the PlayStation 3, and that basically prevented there ever being a party chat and features like that became kind of the key stuff that people loved about the 360. I mean, they had no way to respond to that, and now they got tons of memory and obviously a fundamental bend in this direction. So
yeah,
I mean, the way they've set things up, honestly, they seem very on the cutting edge, and it will be interesting to see how Microsoft responds, given that I think Microsoft's going to make possibly a bigger deal of this aspect of their console than in the past, for sure.
Right. Well, I think more than anything, the fact that they got out ahead of Microsoft, they have claimed like this part is their voice right now before anyone else could, and they've like a big thing that I think was really important with this is that they made games like the focus, like the game or the focus. They didn't talk about like Netflix or about being able to watch Hulu on there. They just really talked about games and different ways to interact with games. I think their overall philosophy was true to what they were saying.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a gamer's console, and it seemed that way even before the conference, just given the rumors and everything that were floating around. But I mean, obviously, they're proud of the fact that uh, they're the top Netflix device, and they want to keep that going. And they did mention support for lots of streaming services and media applications like that. Um, just in terms of uh, what they're trying to set up here. They were trying to uh, sort of convey the overall experience that players are going to have using the PlayStation 4, rather than what's under the hood, what the specs are. This is a stark contrast to the PlayStation 3 reveal in that way. I mean, it's not about some exotic chip. This is about here is our operating system features. Here is our social features. Here's some next generation cloud gaming stuff that we're going to have from the get go, and everybody, basically considers that kind of thing to be the future anyway. So they're going to have a jump start possibly in that regard.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to what really matters here. Let's talk about some of the games that they showed off at this conference. Let's start off with. Let's get this out of the way. Blizzard announced that they're going to be bringing Diablo 3 to the PS4 and PS3.
Yeah, we gotta make sure to get the biggest one out of the way first.
Yeah, exactly. This game's practically a year old. Is it really even worth? I mean, aside from the fact that Blizzard's putting a system on a game on a console, is this even really news?
Honestly, it's not as bad as the Wii U when that was first revealed. I mean, that was chock full of games we had already played. But I mean,
right.
but the fact of the matter is that Blizzard came on the stage and like, this is the first time that we are making a game for consoles since the Super Nintendo. This is really exciting. You could almost hear like drums in the background just like building up to this great moment. And it's like, oh my God, is this going to be like Project Titan? What is this? And then it's like, oh, it's Diablo 3.
Yeah, I think once they came out on stage, it was kind of obvious what they were going to announce. They've haven't been quiet at all about their interest in putting Diablo 3 onto consoles. How good! I mean, the game pretty much lends itself to a controller, so it was a no-brainer that it was coming out. But to debut it as if it's anything on the level of some of the other announcements we had yesterday, it just not so much.
Yeah, that was kind of a low point of the conference, but thankfully that was more towards the tail end of it, and then Activision followed up with them and brought out Bungie's thing, and that was actually kind of cool. Not necessarily because of the fact that they were talking about Destiny, because we already knew about Destiny.
Right.
And it's not necessarily a trump card for the PlayStation 4, but it was the first time that we saw actual in-game footage of Destiny. And Sony can say that was at their conference. So that brought a lot of attention to the event, and also the fact that Bungie seems to, they're bringing exclusive content to the PlayStation 4. They seem really supportive of the platform, and what that exclusive content is. Hopefully it's not just skins or something, but we'll see.
Microsoft's going to have exclusive content too. That really doesn't I don't think, mean much. It just sounds good when you think of all the possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that they showed off was this new IP. There was a couple of new things. First of all, Knack was a totally original game that looked kind of like, in terms of art style, sort of like the Ratchet and Clank or Jak and Daxter type games. And I remember looking at it at the live feed and thinking, this doesn't look that good, but that's the live feed for you. It looks better in the screenshots, but I mean, it's interesting that at least they showed something that we didn't quite expect. I mean, it is a new IP. They just didn't show much of it. It's just there's a lot of questions there, a lot of unknowns in terms of that. And there was a whole bunch of games that we didn't expect